You may begin.
Good morning. My name is Kelly Maston, Coalition Manager from Nashville, and I would like to welcome you to today's SAMHSA-sponsored webinar titled Building a Framework for Developing a Comprehensive School-Based Mental Health Program. Today's presentation will be recorded, and the recording link, slides, and a certificate of attendance will be sent via email to everyone who attended today. Closed captioning can be viewed, by clicking the CC at the bottom of your screen or clicking the link in the chat pod to view as in a separate window. We also have an ASL interpreter who should be spotlit on your screen. When the presentation ends, a brief survey will show in your browser. Please take a few moments to share your thoughts about today's presentation. Thank you again for joining us today, and I would like to turn this over to Jackie Zimmerman from MHA, Mental Health America, who will introduce our speakers and give a brief overview of today's webinar. Thank you. Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you so much, Kelly, and thank you again to SAMHSA for sponsoring this webinar. This is the first in our series of 4, so thank you all so much for being here today. We look forward to having you join us, not only for this one, but our next ones to come as well. Today's session is building a framework for developing a comprehensive school-based mental health program. Like Kelly said, my name is Jackie Zimmerman. I am the manager of the Public Education Partnerships and E-Learning at Mental Health America's National Office, and I'll be here to support and help moderate during today's webinar. I'm joined today by the Dallas Independent School District for them to share about their school-based mental health program that has been incredibly successful in addressing student mental health. During today's session, they'll be providing you with a framework and resources that your school can use to support mental health needs. And we'll give you a roadmap of how they've developed their evaluation, planning, implementation, and sustainability of their school-based mental health services. I just want to make note that this webinar was developed in part under SAMHSA's contract number you can see here, and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. The views, policies, and opinions expressed are those of our authors today and do not necessarily reflect those of SAMHSA or HHS, but we thank SAMHSA for sponsoring today's session. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce the guests we have with us today that will be leading our session. We have Dr. Deborah Purge, who is the Center Manager for Dallas ISD, Dr. Tracy Brown, the Executive Director of Mental Health Services, and Dr. Anna Marie Perez, the Mental Health Services Quality Assurance Manager for Dallas ISD. We are so grateful that each of you are able to join us here today, our speakers, and so grateful for those of you that are joining us as guests. Just a reminder, please post your questions in the chat. Your cameras are automatically off and your mics are muted, but we would love for you to participate today. We'll have a few opportunities where you're able to engage, but feel free to add your questions in as our session goes. I'll be collecting those, and we will have some time at the end where we'll be able to go through those questions with our speakers. So I will hand it over to our doctors to take it away and start our presentation.
Thank you, Jackie. And as we get started, or before we get started, I'd like to offer a huge thank you to Mental Health of America, along with SAMHSA, for this opportunity to share with the audience information that we hope will be helpful to you as you think through the possibility of building a school-based mental health program in your district. My name is Dr. Tracy Brown, and I am joined with Dr. Deborah Purge and Dr. Anna Marie Perez, who are on our mental health services team in the Dallas ISD. And so we're super excited to be here and to, again, share with you our program. While we're waiting, we would love to know who you are. So if you would just take a moment to put your name and where you're joining us, from where you're joining us in the chat. So we have some people, from Garland here in Texas. We have Tennessee, Abilene, wow. Virginia, Massachusetts, Houston, Hillsborough, oh boy, Ohio, Delaware, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Idaho, Ohio, Washington. Wow, Pittsburgh. Whoa. All right, Steelers. So we are, I thank you all so much. Keep putting them in because we want to know where you're from. And we feel like we're all in this together as we think through how we can design our services to best meet the needs of our students. New York, all right, love it. Georgia, Pennsylvania, Louisiana, South Carolina. Yay. All right. Well, thank you all for that, and continue to let us know who you are and where you're from. As Jackie said, as we go through the presentation, please put your questions in the chat. We would love to answer any questions you may have. Hopefully, as we go through the presentation, we'll be able to answer some of those questions. But if you have any toward the end, we're more than happy to make space for that. So as we move forward, next slide. So today our goal is again to offer you opportunities and ideas on how to kind of design a framework for building a school-based mental health program, and then thinking through how to organize resources to support your students' needs. So, and then also to provide a roadmap for evaluation, planning, implementation, and sustainability of your school-based mental health program, and then addressing some of the challenges and barriers to implementation. So that's our goal. And as we move forward, again, we hope that we'll offer information that will be helpful to you as you think through your school-based mental health program. So next slide. All right, so I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Deborah Purge, and she's going to walk us through some activities.
So good morning, everyone. As Dr. Brown said, we have a word cloud that we are doing. Just give me a moment. I will share my screen. Okay, if you could please use your camera to take a screenshot of the QR code. If your camera is not able to work, if you look at the top of your screen, you should go to menti.com and put in the number. You should be able to join our word cloud. So let me read the question. Using one word, tell us what element is the most important for developing a school-based mental health program. So this is in your opinion. What do you think is most important? We're going to give you a few minutes to, wow. Awesome. Coordination, collaboration. As the words come in, the words that are very similar will start to get bigger. Dr. Brown, we're having a lot of words come in.
I see. That's wonderful. Great ideas.
Buy-in, child-centered, yes. Compassion, consistency. That is so important. Communication, empathy, yes. Wow, keep it coming. Anne Marie Dr. Perez will take a picture of the screen at one point so we can capture some of the words that are coming in. So we'll give you just a few more minutes to get it in. I see preparedness, trauma-informed, assessment, patience, very much so, patience, resources, accessibility. We're going to stop sharing now and have Amy to get back on the PowerPoint, but please keep it coming because the Mentimeter will still be live. Thank you so much. We're going to go on to the next slide. No, back. Oops, next slide. It's Amy, are you trying? Oh, okay. We need the next slide. Yeah, it's not staying. There you go. Thank you so much. Thank you for working with us, Amy, on advancing the slide for us. Now, as we look at this data, it's really important to see what is happening with our student and why having a school-based mental health program is important. So the data that I have in front of you is from the Youth Risk Behavior Survey data summary. And what we find with that data summary is the most recent data as well as the trend over the past 10 years. So this data looked at 2011 to 2021. And one of the things that the data looks at are the health behaviors and experiences of high school students. And according to the data, I'm sure we're not surprised about this, but our students are struggling and they're experiencing a high level of distress that warrants us to put something in action now. We can all agree that COVID did not leave us the way that it found us. The pandemic was a very trying time that ushered in a great deal of challenges and issues for all of us. The state of our mental health is in such a state that the U.S. Surgeon General declared that we were experiencing a mental health crisis. But folks, we can all agree that our students, our youths have been struggling for a long time. If we look at the data that's on top, it says more than 50% of mental health condition will start at age 14. And so as we look at our data, the CDC says that in the 10 years leading up to COVID, that there was a 40% increase, in the number of our students who expressed that they were experiencing extreme sadness and hopelessness. And our data today is showing that suicide is the second leading cause of death for our youths. If that alone isn't something to tell you why it is so important for us to have a mental health program, because that's where our kids are most of the time. If we look at the data here, that is it's my right, it says that, and we're looking at percentage. So if we look at the experience persistent feeling of sadness or hopelessness in 2020, the percentage was 28. In 2021, which is the most recent data we have, it's at 42%. Ladies and gentlemen, we're trending in the wrong direction. If we look at how many students seriously consider attempting suicide, in 2021, we had 16%. In 2011, we had 16%. And in 2021, once again, it's trending in the wrong direction with 22%. Our kids are hurting. We have 8% in 2011 that attempted suicide. In 2021, we have 10%. This tells us that we've got to take action now because our students are in crisis. And according to the US Surgeon General, that is a risk to our democracy. So I'm getting ready to show you a video, but I'm going to talk to you for just a little bit. The National Alliance on Mental Illness suggests that we need to have policies and practices that are set up to provide greater awareness of mental illness, as well as increase the opportunity for early identification. We all know that untreated trauma, undiagnosed and untreated mental health issues pose a great barrier to academic success and growth. So if our students are in the classroom, on campuses every day, we provide an opportunity, a unique opportunity, an optimal opportunity for education, for prevention, for intervention, and for treatment. So as we go on, and this video is going to talk about why school-based mental health is important. School-based mental health increase access to service, decreases stigma around mental health. And it is needed, and it is time. Can you play the video for me, please?
So when I was a teacher 8 years ago, I wish that I would have had mental health training. I did have a student who felt really close to me, and she did come to me one day and let me know that the night before she had attempted to die by suicide. And I didn't know what to say. I did take her to the counselor. I had no idea how to address that. As a young teacher who was teaching juniors in high school, that was really eye-opening for me.
I'm passionate about school-based mental health because as a young adult, I experienced mental health issues in college. But with the right support and services, I was able to get my life back on track. Schools offer a unique opportunity for early identification, prevention, and intervention that serves students where they already are. NAMI believes that public policies and practices should promote greater awareness and early identification of mental health conditions. NAMI supports public policies and laws that enable all schools, public and private, to increase access to appropriate mental health services. NAMI offers Ending the Silence, which is a school-based presentation to raise mental health awareness.
I wish I would have had this when I was a teacher. I didn't know what I was doing. We didn't get mental health training in schools. Ending the silence for staff, that's really big because that teaches you the early warning signs. It teaches you how to document and what to document.
Many mental health conditions begin in youth and young adults, with 50% of all mental health conditions beginning by age 14.
So my daughter actually has anxiety, and we were able to know that she has anxiety because she started experiencing tummy aches, just like I did when I was in the 4th grade, and we're able to get her help early, but it has been a challenge.
We must take steps that enable all schools to increase access to appropriate mental health services.
So to wrap up the video, the importance is to have that shared and common language. It's about ending the silence. For us here in the district, we use youth mental health first aid, where our goal is to educate the staff around the district on the challenges of mental health, the different mental health challenges that our students face. So I am going to turn it back over to Dr. Brown to take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Purge. And, you know, as Dr. Purge has just shared statistics around some of the challenges our students are facing, we see it every day. This is my, and I'm going to date myself, this is my 28th year in Dallas ISD and 30th year in education. And over the course of that time, have just seen a wide array of issues and challenges and concerns our students face. And also being on the campus, actually, you know, interacting and interfacing with staff who have concerns about students' mental health. And we know that those are concerns because there is a disruption in that child's ability to learn, to engage, and to even oftentimes just to attend school. So we know that we are in a mental health crisis, and we want to now kind of turn our attention to, you know, if you're thinking about building a school-based mental health program in your district, we want to just kind of give you some insight into, you know, kind of where to start. Maybe think through some of the components of a program you might want to consider, and then just talk through, you know, the resources and how to navigate some of the logistical things that you might need in the process. Next slide. So we kind of want to begin with the end in mind, right? So at the end of the day, you can talk about concerns, you can talk about challenges and barriers to student learning, but you want to start with need. And you want to start with really getting to know the students in your district and what challenges they face. So to kind of gauge that need, you want to begin to interact with your stakeholders. We feel like the number one stakeholder is your board of trustees and is your senior leadership. So as you're thinking through and talking through with stakeholders, team members in your district, you want to kind of keep that in mind, because at the end of the day, if you're in a school district and you're thinking about a school-based mental health program, more times than none, you're going to need to get that approved by your board. So you want to kind of keep that in mind. So start gathering information, start, having talks with parents, with communities, with other members of the community, with other stakeholders, with students. Ask students what they need. Oftentimes we, go to campuses and we just talk to kids and say, hey, what are you struggling with? And then how can we best meet your need? And many times the response is, I just need somebody to talk to. I just need somebody who will listen to me and who will address the needs that I have. So kind of engaging your stakeholders, and then thinking through funding, because at the end of the day, if you're in a district, it's going to be, we may identify the need, but then the question is, well, how are we going to fund it? How are we going to get the funds we need in order to hire the staff that we need to support the students? So just from a macro viewpoint, I wanted to just kind of let you know how we are able to do that in our district. And of course, we do have, and I always, every time I get a platform, I always want to take time to thank our board of trustees and our senior leadership, because they are the ones who have said, yes, we know there is a need, but not only did they say it, but they're putting action to that. And through their funding, they have been so kind and gracious to us to give us a pot of funds in order to hire the staff that we need to support students. So that comes from our general operating budget. And so a very large portion of our ability to fund the program is through general operating funds. We also do receive Title I funds. We have a large number of students who are economically disadvantaged. And so those Title I funds are there to help close the gap for students. So we do have a number of clinicians and staff that are funded through Title I. We also receive special education funds. Unfortunately, this is really not a good stat we want to share, but we do have in our district a group of students, our African-American students, who are disproportionately in special ed due to being identified as economically disadvantaged. So if there is a disproportion, then the goal is to put our licensed clinicians on the campus to get to those students first, to see if this is truly a diagnosis of emotional disturbance, or is it a trauma response? Is the behavior we're seeing from students based on the experiences they've had? And in order to gauge that, we have licensed clinicians on the campus who are able to work with students. And then once they work with those students and we still see there's some clinical concerns for which we might need to go ahead and move on to special education to see if there needs to be a modification in that child's educational process, then we go ahead and do that. But we want to give the opportunity for our mental health clinicians to work with those students before we move on to special education. So special education funding, grant funding is available to us in our district. And then we do have other grants that do support our staff. And before I talk through that, I do want to speak to Medicaid, because we are able to, because we do employ licensed clinicians, we are able to receive Medicaid reimbursement for the services that we provide. And then moving back to grants, we do have other grants that support our work. The most recent is the Stronger Connections Grant. If you're in the state of Texas, many of the districts applied for that, those funds. And so we applied and did receive the grant, and we're putting those resources toward hiring school-based clinicians and a coordinator for the program. So that in a nutshell is how we are able to fund the program. But again, I just want to reiterate the only way we're able to do that is that our board of trustees and our senior leadership provide us with that support. Okay, so next slide. All right, so here's the framework. So in Dallas ISD, our program consists of these big rocks. So we do have school-based services available. So we have licensed clinicians, we have, licensed professional counselors, we have LMFTs, which are our licensed marriage and family therapists. We have LSSPs, our school psychologists, and we have our, who am I missing, you all? Oh, clinical social workers, our licensed social workers on the campus that are working with students, and they go to the campus and provide services there. They do operate in tier 2 and 3, so they're working with students on behavior interventions. They're supporting teachers and staff, excuse me, in terms of consultation and really kind of working through, the student's behavior or the student's concern, and just coming up with a game plan as to how we can support students on that tier 2 spectrum, and also working with school counselors. So if there's counseling needed, those school counselors can step in, provide short-term services, and then they move the students onto our camp, which is in mental health services, and we move students into tier 3, and we begin to provide counseling and more intense psychotherapeutic services for those students. So that's our school-based services. We also have clinic services, and I'm proud of the fact that we do have 13 youth and family centers in our district. Just received the 13th one, or just built the 13th one last summer, and super excited about that. Our youth and family centers are comprised of our licensed therapists that do long-term treatment. We also have psychiatry available, and that's actually one of the other big rocks you see here. But we do have a contract with licensed psychiatrists to provide evaluation, medication management, and psychiatric treatment for students that are in need of medication and care. We also have our wraparound specialists, or our wraparound services. These are in essence our case managers that work with our clinicians and work with our psychiatrists, work with all staff to support students and parents, connecting them to district and community resources to make those available to students. So we oftentimes find, yes, students have a mental health need, but then they also have a need for other wraparound services. You may have students that are homeless, you may have students that are in residential treatment for substance abuse and so forth. And so our wraparound specialists are really there to help connect and oftentimes be the bridge to those services. So we're excited and blessed to have that. And then we have our drug and alcohol prevention and intervention program, and we're excited. We just hired our drug and alcohol intervention manager who's coordinating alcohol and drug intervention services for students in our district. So the goal there, again, is to connect, to address students' concerns. We have a lot of students that are really struggling with addiction. And we want to make sure that we're able to, meet that need in terms of addressing that concern. And again, if a student needs like residential treatment or a very high intense level of care, we're working with parents to help students to access that level of care. So in a nutshell, this is our framework. This is our program. We are still growing and we're still, and we feel extremely fortunate to be able to hire clinicians, hire staff to meet the needs of our kids. Okay, next slide. All right, so if you're in the schools, this term is not foreign to you. The multi-tiered system of support is a framework whereby you're able to move students through the intervention program or intervention scope, if you will, in order to ensure that they're getting the appropriate level of care. And so at Tier 1 for mental health services, we're there on the campus with our school-based clinicians supporting teachers and counselors in like school-wide activities. You may have like alcohol and drug month or Red Ribbon Week or Random Acts of Kindness Week. All of those activities, we're on the campus there to support those efforts and really be the mental health champion on the campus to shine the light on, like Dr. Purge said, signs and symptoms of mental health concerns, and then working with staff to understand how to move kids through the intervention program. So that's Tier 1. Tier 2 is our kind of getting more to your small groups of students that really need a little bit more, you know, intense level of care, if you will. So those are kids that move to our counselors, that may be progress monitored, and there's some goals there in our MTSS program. We have SST, which is our student support team at each campus, and then our mental health clinician is there to provide consultation, to provide kind of be the mental health expert there to help that team put together an intervention plan that is suitable for students. Yes, championing peer services, yes. And then we have Tier 3, which is the scope in which we live. We are there, we are the service provider, we are the ones that are really helping to incorporate therapeutic practices that are gonna really meet the needs of students. Within the last 2 years, we've really been talking a lot about impact, with the understanding that we're licensed mental health professionals, but understanding how that piece is just really important to the overall scope within our district, which is helping students to be academically, socially, and emotionally successful. So in terms of MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support, that's how we kind of address student concerns and are able to move students through that intervention process. Next slide. So this one I won't spend too much time on because I've kind of walked through the process, but in essence, this is our continuum of services. So again, mental health services, we operate in all 3 tiers. It's just how we operate. We serve all students. We are in on the prevention side, the intervention side, and I will have to say more the postvention side as well, to support students in meeting their concerns. Next slide. All right, so now we're going to have Dr. Perez, who's going to talk with us about access to services.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to talk a little bit about access to our services, and first going to start with our referral process. So on the screen, you will see sort of some part of in terms of our referral. So prior to COVID, we had paper forms and that's how we receive referrals for services, but COVID kind of forced everyone, I guess, to pivot to make sure our students and families could access the services that we needed. So we've implemented an electronic referral system that is tied to our student data system. So the person making the referral will put in the student ID number and it will pull up all the demographics for that student, such as their school, their grade, the parent or guardian's information, date of birth. Also will indicate if they're in special education or not, or receiving 504 services. It will also ask for in terms of the referral reason. Now, in our district, the main people I would say that are referring to through the electronic referral system are our school counselors, our nurses, principals, assistant principals, reset coordinators, special education staff, of course, our department as well. And that would be something just also to think of if you are moving forward with electronic referral system, who do you want to have access to that system? Not all our district staff have access. Currently, if parents can also self-refer. So sometimes we do have some families that do not necessarily want to have someone from the school putting in that referral. So usually how we do that is they will come to the clinic, we will put the referral in for them, because we want to make sure that everyone who wants services can receive services. And I think also just something I think I saw in the chat is we see all students, regardless if they have insurance or don't have insurance. So we will still provide services, the whole continuum, whether it be psychiatry services, counseling at the clinic, counseling in the school, regardless if they have insurance or not. One of the things that's been really good at having an electronic referral system is that we can pull reports from this. We can pull data. So we can track and see what is the most common referral reasons that we're seeing. We can look at it at the high school level, middle school, elementary school. We also can see what schools are referring, what schools are not referring, and help in terms of increasing in terms of trying to engage those schools. And for those schools that are referring a lot, maybe providing extra support if needed. So it does allow us to really track in terms of our referral information, and we also are able to look at trends as well. So that's been really helpful for our program. We're also able to adjust the referral form as needed, add extra fields if there's additional things that we need to capture. I think one of the things also just to keep in mind when using an electronic system is make sure you know who your IT person is, because they will be needing to provide support as well. So I think that's also important just to think of that as well. So. And then our consent for services. So we have currently within our program, we have 2 separate consents. We have one more for our school-based services and then one for our clinic-based services. Our clinic consent really has, in addition to the consent, other pieces as well, including reviewing rights and responsibilities in terms of HIPAA, also financial or insurance information. And again, we will see anyone regardless if they do have insurance or not. I think one of the things that we do run into sometimes if there are students that do need services and trying to get a consent for services. So we are fortunate that we do have the wraparound specialists, as Dr. Brown has mentioned, so they can help in terms of work with the clinician, trying to get the consent, try to work with the family, spend extra time. We also will reach out to our school counselors if we are having difficulty trying to get consents back from families. This is also electronic as well. So that also helps just in terms of getting the consent directly to the person requesting it. But we understand also that some families have barriers when it comes to technology or might not have access to technology. So this also can be printed. Families can fill out a hard copy, if needed. So we want to make sure that we're reducing any barriers to access our services as well. One of the things also, just in terms of keeping in mind, with the consent, is that sometimes those individuals, if it's a guardian or a student living, for example, with a grandparent, those people who can maybe provide consent for education, it might be something different. Their consent might not extend, or their permissions might not extend to mental health. So in the cases of divorce or unaccompanied minors or overage students or students living with other relatives, just to make sure, just in terms of that the person that you are seeking that consent for is the person who has that permission to provide that consent as well. So I think that's another piece just in terms of to keep in mind. Again, also know who your IT person is in terms of in case there's any technologies that come up as well. So, but I think we do our best to trying to engage those students and those families. So if consent is an issue, we will see how can we work, if there's a difficulty getting, consent, or in the case of divorced parents, we can start maybe with the parent. We can start, helping the school counselor. Maybe they can provide students, services to that student while we're waiting on the consent. So we just want to make sure that we're all working collaboratively to make sure the students are receiving services that they need. And here you will see a list in terms of resources. When you do receive the PowerPoint, all these will be hyperlinked. So on the left-hand side, you will see some resources such as Say Something, that is part of the Sandy Hook reporting system. That is something that's used internally by DISD. And you also see, for example, the 988, which is the suicide and crisis hotline. The right-hand side, you'll see some of the community partners that our program is currently working with. I think is what's really important is that in order to be able to sustain your program, you really need the support and collaboration with your community partners. Now, depending on your community, what the need is might look a little bit different. So I'd say it's really important to ask your community, what are the resources that they are needing? You can do a community needs assessment to better address in terms of what the needs are, what the hopes are, for that community. One thing that's great in terms of just your community partners, they can help with training, of your staff. They can help provide training to families. They can help with provide training to students. One of the things also, just depending if you're working with in areas where there's a very, impoverished areas or very vulnerable populations, your medical partners could be extremely important. For our youth and family center clinics, we have several medical partners that are at those clinics. The goal is to eventually have them at all our clinics again. But with the medical partners, they are not just seeing our students, they are also seeing our families and providing care to those families as well. I think in terms of just community partners, our Grow Your Own program is also in terms of looking in terms of expanding, in terms of providing supervision, also partnering, eventually our local in terms of universities to help build a more of an infrastructure as well to help sustain our program, because just we are continuing to grow and the need continues to grow as well. And I understand just in terms of, I think just, some of your community partners also could be the ones advocating for your program. They can be your biggest supporters. They could be ones also reaching out to your trustees, to your upper leadership, because they are often the ones that are kind of initiating that in terms of wanting a program in their area or wanting a clinic in their area as well too. So I think your community partners can have a really big impact on the ability of your program to sustain your program, to grow your program as well. So those, again, will all be hyperlinked when you receive the PowerPoint, but we've been fortunate that we've been able to partner with such a variety of partners, and just being in a city, I understand that we are in an urban community in terms of Dallas, and I know not everyone might be in the same in terms of have the same in terms of access to resources, but, to be creative, I think just in terms of also, thinking outside the box. And again, your community partners, your families might have even be able to identify those partners and be able to identify things you might not even thought about. So rely on your stakeholders, your parents, your students also as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Purge, who's going to talk a little bit about anchoring your why. And I love your slide, Dr. Purge.
Thank you so much. Believe it or not, okay, so full disclosure, I think I'm one of the mushy ones here out of the presenters. And so this is one of my favorite slide for the presentation. And it's called Anchor Your Why. And the reason that we have this slide in the presentation is when you think of an anchor, you think of something that is tethered to something solid and something that is strong. And that no matter what comes the way, the storm, maybe we get a no, Dr. Brown gets a no here, she doesn't give up, or our leadership gets a no here, they don't give up. We anchor our why. And the reason that it's important to anchor your why, because your why keeps you centered, it keeps you focused, and it keeps you on task. If you think of a ship, I went on a couple of cruises last year, and when we got to a port and we stopped, they anchored the ship. And last March, when I was traveling, it was really bad weather. And even though the ship swayed and it moved, it never got away and it never got lost. And so for our team and our staff in Dallas ISD, we try to remind them what their whys are and why they do this work. What's the purpose? What's the goal? What's the higher calling? And for me, for example, I anchor my why in my faith. And I believe that everything that I do, it's my purpose. It's the reason that I'm here. And my purpose is to make a difference, either to our staff, the staff of Dallas ISD, the children and family, because together, when you anchor your why, children succeed, children survive. One of the quotes that I like to, that I've recently fallen in love with is, it says that the obstacle to treatment or engagement in treatment is not the absence of pain, it's the absence of hope. Let me say that again. the obstacle to treatment or engagement in treatment is not the absence of pain, it's the absence of hope. So as you feel comfortable, I already see some of that, and Jackie's going to help me. If you're comfortable, we want to know a little bit about what your why is. And Jackie, can you help us with a few of them?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all so much for putting these in. There's some really powerful and great ones. Thank you all for sharing. We have a few coming through to make the future brighter than the past. We need to do better for people's mental health so that they can do better every day. We can't afford to not. And somewhere there is a child or family depending on us to bring them to shore. That is so true. We cannot afford to not help. We're in such crisis right now, and there's children in crisis and hurting. To ensure children's voices are heard and their needs are being addressed. Absolutely. Centering this and empowering them to ask for the help so that they can get these services that schools are providing. Really great ones. Providing a safe space for youth to exhale without judgment and support inhalation for healing. A call and not work. Yes.
So as we look at our whys, and as we go to the next slide, and Jackie, would you want to read more, or are we okay to go on?
We can go on. These are all so powerful and beautiful. Thank you all. Continue to put those in, and we'll keep reading them on our end.
Yes, and so as we look at trauma and how trauma leaves epigenetic changes for us and for our student, meaning that trauma changes how our DNA is expressed. It doesn't alter our DNA, but it changes our DNA. But it changes how our DNA is expressed or how our brain interprets the DNA sequence. Our school-based mental health program has the opportunity to help children to reset, to have second chances. It allows students to have the ability to change their problem-saturated narrative and to chart a new future. It's all about student success. And so in our district, we are very, very blessed that the district has anchored its why. And the why is that our student matter, that their success matter, that their growth matter, that we're creating the people of the future. And we want to pour it in. And this is not in any way an easy task. And so as the district continues in its support of student, our goal is to provide access to equitable service, affordable service, and effective service. I know there was a question in the chat about, and I think Dr. Perez did a great job as well as of answering that. Our goal isn't to make money off of the kids. Our goal is to provide services. We have many students that either have other insurance that may not cover our services or may not have insurance, and we don't say no. The only time we may not be able to offer something for a student is if we don't have the service that they need, but then that's where our community partners come in and we can refer out. So we take pride, and we take this as a privilege, as our purpose. So as we look at our journey, our road to implementation, what are we doing, Dr. Brown?
Well, we are going to take a closer look, most definitely. And I'm really, I was really kind of looking at all the comments in the chat, and wow, I think that's where it is understanding our purpose and understanding the part we play to not just, we're building our future. At the end of the day, our kids are our future. And if we are concerned about that, then we'll hopefully think through and come together and just talk about how can we continue to support our students and address their concerns, because we all know that kids cannot learn if they are in class and they are, just going through all of, the issues and challenges and concerns that they have without help. So they can't succeed with those barriers in front of them. So as we move forward to kind of, give you some ideas on where to start, we kind of just wanted to share our timeline and our progression as to how we got to where we are. We do feel that we have a robust program where we are able to go and deploy as needed. And again, we see it as a true blessing, and it's all of us doing our part to ensure our students' success. So just kind of, as we take a closer look, we'll just take a quick look back so you can kind of see from where we have come and then where we are now. So we kind of started, we being Dallas ISD, we started this process actually kind of back in the 70s. There was actually two separate departments. We had a psychological and social services department. We also had other counseling and mental health supports back then. And so that department was going forward for some time. Moving on up to the 1990s is when our youth and family centers came into play. And this was a collaboration between the district and the MHMR services within our community that came together to imagine a program or a process in which we could offer services to students that would give them kind of a one-stop shop, if you will. So that's where the model for our youth and family centers has come from. We offer both mental and physical health services in our clinics. So when families come, we understand that oftentimes when they have mental health concerns, there's also a need for medical treatment. And so our partners, as Dr. Perez mentioned, our partners are there to address those concerns. We do have a provider or a doctor that is assigned within that medical partnership, and they address students in terms of sick care, in terms of immunizations, if they're in need of disease management and so forth. Those providers are there in the clinics to provide that support and those services. So we kind of tag team. So if a student gets referred to our therapist or a licensed clinician and they're providing service, if there is a need to move those services to psychiatry, we have a psychiatrist there. Or if the student needs a medical issue to be addressed, we have our medical partners there. So that process got started back in the 1990s. We have a great community partnership with our medical partners, and we're really excited to be able to join hand in hand with them to provide those services to students and their families. And so fast forwarding to 2020, oh boy. So I talked about the big, the psychological and social services department that was created back in the 70s. Then we have our youth and family centers. So back in 2020, this was really in response to COVID and understanding that we really needed to kind of have a more robust approach and more comprehensive and streamlined approach as to how we serve students. The senior leadership came together and thought, well, we have all of these licensed clinicians that are kind of doing the same thing. Why not we develop one program and let them function on that continuum to serve students? So it's not this department does this and this department does this. Now it's one department that's serving students, and we're able to collaborate. I saw, in fact, on the word cloud, I took a picture of it. And I saw collaboration. I think that was the biggest element that we said was important to building a school-based mental health program. And I think we're on point, because without the collaboration and the communication and the coordination of care, we're really not able to address the whole child. So bringing those departments together made sense. psychological and social services, youth and family centers came together and created mental health services. And then now, where we are now, we are working with mental health services and our community partners, as Dr. Perez indicated. We are working with our community partners, again, to serve students. Just yesterday, I was on a call with one of the community organizations that are sending receive foster care students in their organization. And as you all know, that's a very vulnerable population of students. And we thought it was fitting to go to that organization, sit down with them, get on the front side of some of the students' concerns. So as they enter into our schools, we're already able to think through maybe some of the support plans that need to be in place, like counseling or 504 plans. And so, or if we have a student that was formerly in special education, we want to make sure that those special education teachers are getting that information as quickly as possible so that they can make sure that they're providing the appropriate level of modifications and accommodations to support students. As y'all know, when kids come into the school, oftentimes it takes sometimes weeks and months to get those plans and make sure everybody has them and put them in place and make sure students are taken care of. So we're really excited about that, and we continue to look for ways to support students from a very collaborative standpoint. So moving on, next slide. So that's where we started. Where we are now, I see there's a lot of questions in there about staffing and how do you support in terms of, funding. And that's why we wanted to start with funding first, because we know, sometimes it is about, resources, financial resources that you have to support students. So right now, in terms of staffing, we have 146 clinicians, and that again includes those school-based clinicians in addition to the licensed clinicians that are in the clinic. We have our managers. We have, I think we have 19 managers of school and clinic. Of course, we have our two managers here. We have Dr. Perez, who's our quality assurance manager. We also have Dr. Purge, who's our she's just got a new title, Special Programs and Training Manager, and super excited about that. We have administrative assistants that help just with the paperwork and all the administrative items that are kind of behind the scenes to connect students to services. Operations, we have an operations department. We have an operations director along with a billing specialist and budget specialist and all those folks that are the big machine that makes it all work. They're behind the scenes. Nobody really sees them a lot, but they are an important part of our organization, and they help us to continue to function efficiently. We have 3 directors. We have 2 clinical directors. One is school-based clinical director, and the other is clinic-based clinical director. And of course, we have our operations director. Alcohol and drug staff. Currently, we have we just hired an alcohol and drug manager who supports psychoeducation and drug and alcohol education for really all of our campuses. We did a pilot this year in that we kind of, as we say, borrowed from Peter to pay Paul. And we took 3 clinicians from our school staff and dedicated them to our alcohol and drug program. And we put them at schools where we looked at the data and saw the highest need, like the highest number of kids that were referred to our alternative school for drug and alcohol infractions. And so we put them on the campus and said, hey, tell us if it will work if we dedicate licensed clinicians just to alcohol and drug, while we also have a clinician at that campus and they're interacting and interfacing to support students from a mental health standpoint, and then also from an alcohol and drug support standpoint. Those clinicians also go to the alternative school to give kids a good transition back to the campus. So oftentimes those alcohol and drug clinicians go to alternative school, work with those kids, and then they are a similar and a familiar face when the students return back to the campus. The goal there is to make sure that kids have someone that they are connected to, a trusted adult that they can talk to and continue to work on the concerns that they're presenting with. So we're really excited about that pilot, and that has worked really well for us. It's given us the experience and the information we need to know what next steps to take in terms of what we want to do next year for in our alcohol and drug prevention intervention program. So we're excited about that. We do have wraparound specialists that again serve as, in essence, case managers, connecting students to services, working with staff to make sure they understand and know what services are available. And they're a critical part of our team as well. And I, of course, get the awesome I'm just so fortunate and blessed to be to lead the program. It has been just it's been an amazing journey, pulling this team together to get us in one space, in one accord, and moving in the same direction to support students. So the people you see here are very representative of the amazing staff we have to give our students the highest and the best level of care possible. So that's where we are now. And if you'll advance the slide. So Dr. Purge says she's the mushy one, and she is. So we are super excited, and the staff knows that my heart is to love and serve our students in the best way we can. I've been fortunate to be a teacher in the district. I taught kindergarten and first grade. I was in counseling, school counseling for about 19 years. I was actually a clinician in this department, in our youth and family centers back then, and was able to really serve students both on the campus and in our clinics. And now get an awesome opportunity to lead the department. Our goal is our why. And we know that we are a vital piece of this bigger pie and the bigger why, if you will. And we know that if students' mental, emotional, and physical health concerns are addressed, we have positioned ourselves to really meet the demands of students and find our bigger why and operate in our bigger why. So we know that providing mental health services for students is addressing their academic achievement, is helping students to engage in the classroom. That's a big one too. I will have to kind of pause here and say student engagement is huge. And our goal is to make sure students are in the classroom learning and engaged and exposed to high quality instruction. So that engagement in that classroom is critical. So when students have to be removed from the classroom, we want to be there to receive them. We want to be there to serve them. And so connecting them to a highly qualified licensed clinician is vital to us and vital to helping that student to get back to the classroom and learning. And of course, school attendance. When students experience barriers, we know oftentimes that removes them from that classroom environment and oftentimes from the school environment. So our goal, Dr. Purge has done an amazing job of working at our alternative school, working with the clinicians there, working with the staff at our alternative school, working with the community partners there to make sure that if they do land there, our goal is we don't want them back there. We want them back at their home campus and engaged and really being able to engage in just the regular educational journey that all of our students are able to engage in, but we know we have to address their concerns. And school attendance is important. We want to make sure that kids have every opportunity to be at school, learning with their peers, being supported by their peers, and having an amazing experience at their home school. And so we understand and realize the valuable work that we have in front of us to build and to refine and to continue to grow our school-based mental health program. And we wake up every day making sure that we are connected to the why, and everything we do is with intention, and we're able to accomplish the goal of supporting our students. So that kind of rounds us out for our presentation. And we would love to open it up. Well, first of all, we want to say thank you again to Mental Health of America and SAMHSA for giving us this opportunity to share with you. I think I saw some of my friends around the nation actually that are here. So thank you for joining us. We do want to put our contact information here. That if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. When you go to our website, you're able to just kind of see the scope of our program. And we're also available on Twitter at DISDMHS. We hope that you will connect with us, and we would love to answer any questions you may have. So I'm going to bat it back over to Jackie. And again,
Yeah.
thank you all so much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here and sharing this incredible knowledge with everyone. Thank you all for your questions that you've been posting in the chat. We'll have about 20 minutes for questions. I've been collecting those. Continue to put them in if you have more. We might have time to get to a few more. But yes, thank you to everyone for being here. We'll jump right into questions so that we have time to get through a few. One of our first questions that came up early in the presentation, and I think is a really great point, and gets to the culture that you're able to create within your district of how do we promote help to youth in ways that they'll be willing and comfortable to hear and embrace it. We can have these fantastic resources that are available, but if they're not comfortable saying I need help or accessing them, then that's defeating the purpose of all of this work behind these supports. So how have you been able to promote that to youth in your school so that there is a culture of feeling safe, comfortable, and okay to ask for help and access these services?
So I'll go ahead and address it, and then ask my teammates to kind of chime in as needed. Student voice is vital. Student voice is important. When we are thinking through, ideas of what we might want to do in our district for our students, it is important that we engage them and ask them what their thoughts, what their ideas are for what they need. We're adults, right? And we think we know what they need, but our kids, every time we talk to them, like they give us information that we haven't even thought of. We have an amazing teen board in our district, and they are kind of the voice, a student voice in our district. And they oftentimes give us great ideas for how we need to organize and design our programming. So we're really excited about that. But every time we embark upon an initiative, again, our goal is to make sure students get a voice in that. Not just our students, but our parents too, because parents are vital stakeholders. We need to make sure that we're designing and organizing our programs to meet their needs as well. Because y'all know, parents struggle too, right? And we want to make sure that we're addressing their needs as well. So that's kind of from an overall standpoint, but Dr. Perez, Dr. Purge, do y'all have anything to add there?
To add, Dr. Brown, that one of the things for us is, and we can emphasize this more, is that our school-based clinicians and some of our clinicians, we're on the campus every day. We're going to those meetings, we're going to parent meetings where they're there to handle crisis. When there's a crisis on campus, our clinicians are called that are dispatched, and they're putting together a crisis management team, and they're working with the leadership of the schools, they're working with the student, they're working with the parents. We're there, and we've started for a while. So for us, mental health is, we're trying to fight that stigma. And so you may have someone that go, oh, you go and see a client? Oh, how do you do that? I want to go see a client. And it's like, it's a joy because they come over. When we have clients, some of our clinic clients, they have to walk from their high school. I'm telling you, in the rain, drizzling, we're like, oh no, we don't want to call you. They show up at a clinic. Well, aren't we supposed to have an appointment? But well, we thought it was raining, so we didn't call you. And so we are a present on this campus, and so they're familiar with us. We also do things like we have a flyer that has a QR code that we put on the bathroom doors. And it says it's okay to not be okay. And then we give them some signs and symptoms. And if you're experiencing any of this, do the QR code, and that links to a website. So we've done self-referral. The school-based clinicians have offices, or sometimes have offices on different days. And so they're aware of when they are there on the clinic. And then on the campus, in the clinics, we have so much fun with our clients that sometimes we have to say, you know what, you don't need us anymore. And it's okay for you to fire us because we think you've got this. And so I think we have created a culture where it is okay to not be okay.
And I want to point out, thank you, Dr. Purge. I want to point out, Dr. Perez is a manager in our department and has had experience in the clinic, but she's also a parent. And so oftentimes we are like, okay, Anne Marie, what do you think from the parent perspective? Because we know that parents also have a good insight into student need as well. So Dr. Purge, you want to address
Yeah,
that?
and I was going to say also, just to echo what Dr. Brown and Dr. Purge saying, we're always looking for creative ways to identify students, because we know the ones that are on everyone's radar, but there's plenty of kids that are not on anyone's radar. So that the QR project, as Dr. Purge had mentioned, also self-referral pilot that was started. We also recently did a screening pilot at a high school campus, and had, I think, about 70 students completed, and was able to then, in terms of be able to address some of the concerns that were, look at trends for that campus and best then target the interventions. But yes, as a parent, I mean, I think just in terms of, it's a little bit in terms of an additional perspective in terms of, I work for the department, so I'm very well of resources, but for the parents, when they're not aware of the resources, or where are the gaps, or how do we better communicate these to parents? Or what are, in terms of, I have a teenager, a high schooler, and I have a fifth grader. So it's it's very interesting in terms of, the different, feedback I get, or just in terms of what are students sharing at the campus? What are they aware of are the students aware of resources, especially my high schooler? And if there's something that I might have, you're not aware of, how many other students do we need to try to do a better job, maybe of outreach or communication? Or if you're not, like, also trying to get that feedback from the team board, like, I'm told, by my teenager, I'm old and I don't, just in terms of technology, but, I know for parents, there might be, the best way of getting at, technology, but I think just in terms of for students, I think in terms of the Instagram, or in terms of, or just other social media, or just looking at ways, what's the best way for them to receive that message? Because sometimes we might assume. So I think that's what's really important, just to also make sure your students have a voice, and your parents. And that's why I think our staff go to PTA meetings. They go to back to school night. They go to when there's an opportunity for the parents and families are there, like the district has a lot of parent engagement events. We have staff there. So we can continually be interfacing with parents and families and students to be able to get our services out there, but also to get, ideas that they might have as well too.
And I think finally, our team does such a great job, our clinicians, they do such a great job of being present and available. They are present and available. And a lot of times that's all kids want. They want you to, we as a district as a mental health department within our district has decided that we're going to team up with kids against all the behaviors, because those behaviors that we see sometimes, people may consider those behaviors willful disobedient. but is it really willful disobedience, or is it a trauma or a survival response to something that has been traumatic? So we keep that in mind. And so from the front of our office, my administrative assistant or administrative assistant in our department, they go to trauma training. So from the time they enter into the clinic to the time they go back into the counselor, we don't wait for them to have trauma-informed practices. It's in our waiting room. So we are on one accord when it comes to how we provide services.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, all, for really thoroughly answering that. I love the inclusion of student voice you have in your district, and that is at the center and core. It's something at Mental Health America we really try and center to in all of our work. We have an incredible youth advisory council that helps with our work, and it is so important. If we're creating these services for youth, we want it to be for them. And you know, you mentioned including parents and including youth voices, and there's a difference between including and listening and then embedding that into the programming, which is what you're all doing so well. So thank you for that. I'm going to go into another question for you that's come up, and I know we have folks that are joining us from all over that are in really different areas. You have different funds available, you have different community services available, you have different student needs, different staff capacity, all of those things that really affect your ability to start some of this work. So my question for you all, being in a big district that now has this full-fledged program that's really comprehensive, for some of those that are joining that might say, you know, we don't have any of this. We have a school social worker, we have a counselor, and that's the extent of our services, but we need more. Where can our schools start to take this framework into kind of those bite-sized pieces who might not have the right funding and access to mental health professionals in their area? Maybe they're in a rural community where there just isn't the availability for mental health professionals to help in this capacity. But what are some of those ways they can start to implement this framework and look at the different tiers that you had laid out?
Okay, well, I'll take this one. I am from a rural community as well. I didn't serve in one, but I am from one, and I do understand some of the resources that we may have may not be available in the smaller communities. My encouragement would be start with what you have. Okay, start with what you have. And if it's you, the one counselor or one clinician at the school, get a team around you, a team of teachers, a team, because we know we all have teachers, right? A team of parents, a team, if you have one social worker, see if they will join in with you to form a collaborative. Because that's in essence what we still have to do in our district. As large as we are and with all the resources we have, when we go to the campus, that's our goal, is to build a collaborative at the campus. And so as Dr. Purge talked about licensed clinicians at the campus, if you don't have a clinician, I would say most districts have a counselor or someone who supports student services, or is a student support person. So, you know, pulling those people in and just kind of talking through the challenges and the barriers, and then saying, hey, how can we with our team address student mental health concerns? So if you don't have the funding, if you have the people, then that's the resource that can really help to, again, surround students with that layer of support that addresses their mental health concerns. Parents are, as Dr. Purge indicated, parents are a huge resource. A lot of parents work in the community and they're connected to resources that they can begin to pull people in for you. As other school staff can do the same thing. So I would just say, and then I think, you know, if you're the only mental health professional at the school, I would encourage you as best as possible to take advantage of, you know, forums like this to equip yourself with knowledge to know that, okay, how can I start nurture groups? How can I, engage and have a student forum? So yes, we have a plethora of resources in our district, but being in a smaller district, if you can take advantage of the human resources that are available in terms of yourself and then your collaborative, I think you can accomplish goal. And one more very important resource is the students. Our kids, like they love to help. They love to, connect with adults to say, hey, here's what we need, And so using them to help support students, other students, that peer-to-peer support is important. Some districts are able to have teams where like peer mediation teams where we're helping students to resolve conflict and that type of thing. So I just would say, think outside the box. You don't, if you don't have, and that's what I tell my staff, hey y'all, if we don't have the money, we will figure it out, right? Because we get a lot of what we ask for, but we don't get everything we ask for. So we oftentimes have to find an alternative way to address our students. So Dr. Perez, you had something to add to that?
I was going to also add, and this goes back to your your trustees, your upper level leadership in terms of investing and believing the importance of mental health and in terms of that education for staff. And our district, for some of our professional development days, all staff received training on, they were like recorded trainings, but on trauma and grief, and also in terms of drug and alcohol, on suicide prevention. So I think those are some ways, just in guess, maybe if you don't have ongoing staff, there is ways in terms of bringing education to all staff for them to have a little bit more knowledge, maybe to be more aware of in terms of signs. Mental health first aid provides virtual training, so there's some like looking at maybe training opportunities that are available that, a lot of them are free, even that could be available for the community as well, for your staff, and just for even to increase your knowledge. If maybe there's not staff or funding, but there's ways to at least increase staff knowledge, awareness.
And as we talk about training, I want to put a plug in here. One of the things that came out of COVID, we did receive funding to kind of ramp it up on our training, because we realized there's a lot of trauma going on here with our students, and not just with our students, but also with our staff. So we were able to use some of those CARE Acts COVID funds, if you will, to train our staff on TBRI, and I'm giving them a shameless plug here. But it's an approach where you're really able to address trauma and the signs and symptoms of trauma, so you can look at a behavior and determine whether it's a trauma response, or maybe it was just a kid that just woke up and just had a bad day, right? But at the end of the day, it's to train staff to know how to see the signs and symptoms, and not just that, but to know how to respond in an appropriate way. So training is a huge piece. So if you're able to engage in training opportunities, that just puts more tools in your toolkit. And then if you can develop maybe a trainer of trainers, you can, kind of get your collaborative to work with you to also get trained, and then they go to a campus and they train that staff. So it's just a way that if you don't have the resources, it's just a way to broaden your reach without having to constantly go back to the board to say, hey, we need more money, where there might not be that opportunity for funding. So that's kind of how we've been able to take advantage of the resources we have and kind of spread them out and make them get the maximum amount of use out of that.
And just one more quick addition, just really quickly. One of the things that we also started in our department is our Grow Your Own. So where we anchor or we partner with universities to expand our reach. So we have interns that come in to our department, and they are able to provide services under supervision. And so we have staff that are supervisors, right? And so that's another way that you could do it, is if your licensure has a supervisory designation to it, that's something you could look into, maybe doing an interlocal agreement with your community partners, and then also with the medical partners, so they can do psychiatry services, right? So you just have to talk about what you have. There are local medical partners in your communities that would love to partner with you on such a worthy cause. So you just have to do, we did a community needs assessment. So you just have to do a community needs assessment to figure out what it is that your community really needs.
Yes, that is a wonderful place to start for our districts that are wanting to build out these resources, wondering where to go and feeling maybe a little limited. Those are all really wonderful suggestions. Thank you all. I know we're getting really close to the end of our time, so we won't have time for additional questions. Thank you all for your questions. But just know we will have a second webinar with Dr. Purge, Dr. Brown, and another guest of Dallas ISD coming up next week at the same time. In that session, we're going to be diving into youth in crisis, supporting youth through school and clinic-based mental health programs. So in that session, you'll learn about strategies for working collaboratively with school and community partners, and how to increase awareness of how to effectively implement trauma-informed practices through these school-based programs. So we'll dive deeper in that second session. Some of the questions that I saw coming through in the chat are things that we're going to talk about then. So we really encourage you to register and join us for that. In your follow-up, we'll make sure that the link for our next webinar next week is included in there so you can join us again. I just want to say thank you all for being here. I know Kelly has some closing remarks for us, but it sounds like in the audience, we had a lot of folks who are deeply caring, deeply passionate, and wanting to help youth in their communities, and a lot that are working in schools. And one question that had come up that I just want to uplift was, how are you supporting your staff? And Dr. Purge, you put in so many great comments in there about, and Anna Marie, but of how you're supporting staff at Dallas ISD and how that is a priority. And just something I want to remind everyone here today, after this hour and a half of learning together, it's a lot. The work you're doing is so important, so appreciated, but it can be draining. So I encourage everyone to take some time for themselves this afternoon, maybe tonight, and really focus on your mental health as you're working to support everyone in your community. Thank you all. I'll hand it back to Kelly just for some closing remarks. But again, thank you to our speakers, and thank you to SAMHSA for allowing us to be here today.
Thank you, Jackie. And I will just piggyback on saying thank you, Dr. Purge, Dr. Brown, and Dr. Perez for today's presentation. There was a lot of interaction in the chat today, and I'm looking forward to seeing that again at next week's presentation. As Jackie mentioned too, thank you. Special thanks to SAMHSA for allowing us to share this information with you today. And we will be sending you the post materials, including the slides, the recording link, and a letter of attendance for today's presentation. And we will include the links that were in the chat box as well. Thank you all again. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon and take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. That does conclude today's session. You may now disconnect.